everyone.
It's really great to be here. We're thrilled to be able to share the knowledge we've gained in our trial and error journeys in the audiobook industry.
Yeah, I was saying to one of the moderators actually right before we came on that this information would have been invaluable to us when we were starting out because, again, as James said, everything has been trial and error. So we're happy to share what we've learned with you guys.
So we're going to jump right in. I feel like Megan did a pretty good job introducing us. That covers most of the information there. Right now we are based in Los Angeles, but one of the things I loved hearing about where everyone else is from is I'd say one of my favorite things about this job is you really can do this from wherever you want to be.
Anywhere.
You need a
if you have a home studio, you can do it anywhere.
You need a strong internet connection and a quiet space to work from, and you're good to go. One thing that's been tricky moving from the East Coast, where we were previously, to the West Coast, is a lot of the folks we do work with are on East Coast time. So we're getting a lot of work emails much earlier in the morning.
Yeah.
I've been setting alarms just to sort of check in with emails at like 6 a.m. to see if any new books came in or if people had any questions. So that's been a wrinkle on the West Coast. But again, as long as you can manage that time, you really can do this from London to New Mexico to Winston-Salem.
And I was going to say a lot of the top narrators in the country are not in major markets. So that's, I think, always encouraging to hear as well.
Yeah. So we've broken this down into 3 overarching headings. And we want to talk about each of these sort of areas of the industry separately, and then in the end we have kind of a lesson to take with you, and then hopefully some time for questions. Those 3 overarching themes we're going to be dealing with. First off is the artistry of audiobook narration, what you bring to it as an actor, as a storyteller, as a voice actor. Second, sort of the technical elements.
Which James will be mostly handling, because that's not my forte.
It's what I love. I'm a tech geek, and I like learning about technical things, so I've spent a lot of time over the last 4 years just sort of figuring out how the technical elements of audio recording work. And then the business of audiobook narration, which is you. I mean, it's very self-motivated and self-regulated.
And self-represented.
Yeah. So those are the 3 major things: the artistry, the technical elements, and then the business of the industry. And then we'll close with an exercise. So here we are. Julie, start us out here with a little audiobook artistry.
All right. As you guys can see, this first slide is voicing the book. Now, the first part of that is the author's perspective. You, as the narrator, are the author's voice. Sometimes you get to talk to the narrator beforehand the author beforehand, and sometimes you don't. Now, while it's incredibly helpful to talk to the author beforehand, again, sometimes you're making these decisions on your own, but you are representing the author's voice. So, you need to be totally aware if what you're narrating is in first person or,
I think that's paramount. I mean, knowing that what you're bringing to the table is the author's story. I always, if I ever get a chance to reach out to an author, I always include in an email, even if they didn't cast me themselves, I always thank them for letting me voice their work.
For trusting us with their work,
Writing a book takes a long time. And for a lot of these people, authors big and small, these are labors of love. There may not be a guarantee of a financial return for them. So they're really proud of what they did. And
when they're independent, also, a lot of times they are the ones actually financing the production of the audiobook as well. So it's a major undertaking for both parties.
So being respectful, both in your interactions with the authors if you get a chance, but also when you're in the studio and you're bringing that book to life, honoring what the author had in mind, the intention of their work and their words, is paramount to bringing the book to life. I've actually seen a lot of comments. There was an article recently, I think it might have been in the New York Times actually, that argued that the only audiobooks that should be done should be read by the author because they're the only ones that know how to really speak the voice of the book. As an actor and an artist, I think that's ludicrous, but it does speak to the main thrust of the audiobook work, which is you are bringing that perspective to life. And you, as an accomplished and trained storyteller and actor, generally can do a better job than an author who's trained at writing and working with words on the page.
And yeah, an author isn't going to necessarily be using any sort of like vocal characterizations
Right.
for the individual characters, and that's something that we as actors, as performers, bring to this line of work. Yeah.
Yeah, so our second bullet point there is vocal characterization. And this is an issue that will vary from genre to genre. This is a question that I get asked a lot. Do I do voices for the books, for the characters? And my answer is that it depends on the subject matter. If I'm doing sci-fi fantasy, I go really big. I try and do the most I can with all the voices, especially if characters are from planets that don't exist. I have a lot of latitude to create voices and worlds. But if I'm doing...
And children's books as well.
Yeah.
Children's books are very heavy on doing character voices, and yeah. So.
If you're doing nonfiction, for example, I'm doing a nonfiction right now on the history of Bram Stoker, who's Irish, and there are tons of passages that quote his work. I am not doing an Irish accent when I quote Bram Stoker. I just slightly affect my voice in such a way that hopefully you can hear that I'm no longer the author, I'm a secondary or primary source that's being quoted inside that text. But there are no vocal characterizations for that beyond that slight shift.
Mm-hmm. So that's what we're talking about genre dependency, that
right.
You have to know when to use these things and when not to. And that's generally fiction versus nonfiction, generally.
And I think also the best advice I've ever gotten from anybody in this field is from Dion Graham, who is an extremely accomplished audiobook narrator and voiceover narrator. And he and I were talking at an audiobook event once, and he said, read the book the way you think it should be read. That's the thrust of it. So you may have a different idea about whether or not Bram Stoker should have an Irish accent in a nonfiction about, so know that there is some latitude within that field for you to bring your sense of artistry and creativity to it. And I think that's what makes the field really special. Some narrators are always really heavy on characterization because they have these really fluid, incredible voices with so many characters and accents and dialects and regions that they're...
But that's a special skill. We want to stress that is a special skill. That's like what we're talking about in that bullet point of know your voice. I heard somebody say recently that you wouldn't ask a dog for its best meow. So if if you know the fact that, yeah, I can do this accent, but maybe not this one, and don't put yourself in that position.
Play to your strengths.
Yeah.
When you negotiate or when you speak and introduce yourself, almost any company is going to ask what accents and voices you can do. Tell them the ones that you can do, not the ones you can't.
Yeah.
I've been asked several times, can I do such and such an accent? I cannot do an Australian accent. I can't do it. So I can't do a book that takes place in Perth. I would be doing myself and the author a giant disservice. Now, in my free time, it's in my best interest to work with a dialect coach and train and develop that region and figure out what those vocal sounds are and where they live in the mouth. But as of right now, that's not a strength. And
don't just jump in if you cannot do. If you know that you are not capable.
So know your voice. Know what you can do. What range you have. Also, again, the style of the book will help determine that. I have a slightly higher voice, so I do get cast a lot in with younger male leads or sci-fi fantasy that's like, a 20-year-old kid that's like figuring out he has superpowers. Figure that out about your own voice and know going in what kinds of books, what kinds of characters those worlds would revolve around that you think you'd be best lending your voice to. So, and that will help guide some of that vocal characterization as well.
Yeah.
Listen to the pros. I waited too long to start doing this myself. Go on Audible and check out samples. Go on their bestseller lists and see what people are buying and who they like to listen to.
Yeah.
The same names will keep popping up again and again, and it's because they're really good at what they do. And this isn't as familiar to actors as television and film work because we're all watching TV and film all the time. And you may not be an avid audiobook listener right now, but if this is a field that you want to get into, you need to start listening to the people that do it really well, so that you can start imitating what they do.
Well, not necessarily imitating, but finding what it is that people enjoy about the way that they are voicing a book. And
I was going with the Picasso, like the
imitation is the highest form of flattery?
No, it was like stealing is every artist steals. The good artists steal.
Okay.
I don't know.
I don't know that.
We'll look that up. Come back for the second one, and I'll have that.
Just
source.
Listen to the pros.
Subject knowledge.
Yes.
When you're reaching out to companies, think about what your strengths are. They look for actors. They're excited about people that have theater training.
Mm-hmm.
But they also really want to know more about who you are as a person, because it helps them figure out what kinds of books you'd be right for. For example, I have a degree in philosophy, which not a lot of actors have. So that's a skill set that is specific to my background that helps publishers and producers find books that I may be better suited for, because I have some aptitude or facility with classical Greek language or contemporary philosophical viewpoints that will help me give an authoritative voice to those books.
And I took 5 years of German, but I also went to school for voice, and so I had to sing in lots of languages, and so I'm very good at pronunciation. So if they have a book with, Russian words in it, they can trust me with that because they know that I've had a lot of experience pronouncing those words before and understand how, different letters are formed in the mouth in those languages.
Julie's also a phenomenal baker, and not in any professional capacity, but it's something she's really good at. That's something you let people know.
Mm-hmm.
This is a skill that you have. This is something that you are better at than other people. And people are writing books about all sorts of topics. So that little bit of information that a producer has may end up piquing their interest when they find out that, the head of the French Laundry has written a new cookbook that focuses on her baking, and they think, oh, Julie bakes. Julie knows, she's comfortable in the kitchen. That may highlight that and bring you up.
Yes, your interests as a human being play a lot into this industry. So it's just something to remember.
And particularly when you're looking for demo material, which we're going to talk more about later, find material that engages your interests. You're going to do a better job narrating stuff that you're excited about. So early on, when you're trying to find material to get your foot in the door and get your voice out there, and you're picking projects to start to establish that professional, reputation, find stuff that does engage you and excites you, because you're just gonna do a better job of it. You just will.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Moving on.
Continuing in the artistry
Yes.
mode, script preparation is probably the most important thing to talk about here.
Yeah.
Julie, what's that first thing say?
Read the book. Read it.
Nice. Well done. Okay. Now you owe me
Stop
a Coke. Read the book. We get asked this all the time. Like, do you read the book before you narrate it? Yes.
You have to.
You have to. The parallel I like to say is you would never tell a joke if you didn't know the punchline. You wouldn't start telling a joke if you didn't know the punchline. Don't start telling a story. Don't start reading a book.
Don't start narrating.
How it ends.
Yeah, don't start narrating a mystery when you don't know who did it.
Right. For a couple reasons, and the one that we're talking about right now is you need to know what the story is. You need to have the authority of that author's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to know the full story.
Yeah.
In addition to that, authors do a great job of giving both large and small details about characters throughout a book. So you may be 400 pages into a mystery, and it is at that point that the author describes a character's voice as being lilty, high, or you find out that that character is from Wales or whatever, and you're like, oh, that would have been good to know 400 pages ago. So,
but you won't have that problem if you read the book.
Right.
Also, it's very important to remember what we said on that first slide is that you are the author's voice, and no one knows the book better than the author. You are the expert. So you can't convincingly give voice to the author's work if you don't know it nearly as well as they do.
Yeah.
So.
So how do you read the book? This world has gone entirely digital.
All of it.
All of it. This was not true even 4 years ago when we started. There was
Yeah.
still some folks that like to work with hard copies of books. I've got to say myself, if I try and read late at night, I don't love reading off the iPad. So I've been thinking actually about maybe getting a Kindle as a secondary reading source, but you can't take notes as effectively on a Kindle as you can with the programs we're going to talk about with an iPad or a similar, a comparable Android device.
Yeah.
But yeah, so everything's digital and it works seamlessly. You got to have an active email account because you're going to get scripts sent to you, and you'll get them in PDF form. You load them onto your iPad. The program that we use, the program that most narrators that we know use, is a program called iAnnotate. They recently just upgraded to iAnnotate 4. I believe it costs $10. If you get in there on a holiday weekend, it may be on sale.
It is a fantastic product.
It is a great program.
You can take all kinds of notes. You can highlight in multiple colors. You can actually insert little note bubbles into the text. You can underline things. It's invaluable.
They've got and even if you're
to a narrator.
if somebody's sending you a PDF to sign, if they've got a signature of it, you just throw it in there, sign it, flatten it, and send it back. I mean, it's a great program regardless. But that's the one we use. Any PDF reader will work. I encourage one through line for us throughout this thing is if you're just getting started, if you haven't established yourself, we want to help you find the cheapest ways to create the most professional work. Don't send out subpar material because you may only get one chance to be heard by some of these people. So make sure it sounds professional, but don't spend thousands of dollars up front
on equipment
before you have a job. So maybe you start out with a free PDF program just as you're getting your feet wet, or maybe you're working on your first script, and then you upgrade to iAnnotate if you really love doing this and you find yourself getting more work. The last thing you're going to need, for sure, is
a file sharing service of some sort.
Right. Yeah. So most companies we work with have their own FTP servers. Without getting into too much of the technical, that's just where they exchange the files. And we use a program called CyberDuck, which allows you to put in your credentials to any one of those sites. When we're working independently or working with friends or independent producers or whatever, we use Dropbox. We also use Dropbox for all of our annotating. So iAnnotate syncs to Dropbox. It also syncs to Box. It syncs to a bunch of them. So I can work on one device and make my annotations, and it will seamlessly sync it with everything, and then I come into the studio where we have a dedicated device that we use, and all of my notes are there ready to go. It also helps if you're working with an independent producer or an editor of your own and you need to send them materials, Dropbox. Yeah. You can start out for free with that one, and if you invite friends or tweet, and you can get some free space. Yeah. And again, if you start working a lot and you need the extra room,
you can upgrade to the professional.
It's $100 a year. Any dollar that you spend in this industry is tax deductible.
What?
And almost everybody that you work for, you are an independent contractor, so you don't get taxes removed. Log your records. Make sure you know what you spent money on because you can claim all of it, and you need to make this viable. What do you do when you annotate? What do you like? What's your highlighting game?
So a lot of times I will highlight character descriptions in a different color than I would maybe highlight words and pronunciations. I also underline a lot. I will actually insert those little text bubbles that I was talking about, and you can either do a voice memo, which is great if it's a pronunciation that you want to keep inside the text.
So good for pronunciations.
Or I often write it out phonetically, which is something that I'm just used to doing as a singer. So that's a lot of what I do. When we are working on a script together, we highlight our chapters in different colors just to make it easier for the two of us to differentiate.
Yeah. We use blue for boy, green for girl. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. And that helps us figure out how long each chapter is and how long you're reading for.
Yeah. And as I was saying about character descriptions, I like to highlight those in a different color. That includes anything about voice characteristics of a character, like accents, or like James said earlier, he had a lilting voice. You know, you want to make sure that you have that information at your fingertips.
Yeah.
So
physical descriptions help too. I mean, sometimes it doesn't need to be about the voice to know what that person sounds like.
Right.
If somebody's tall or somebody's fat or somebody's young, or physical descriptions can also help inform how they dress, might inform how that person speaks. So any character description might be useful information to highlight or annotate in some way. I know some narrators that, to help their dialogue flow, will highlight every scene with all the dialogue in character color.
And I did that a lot when we first started. I highlighted each character in a different color, which is a lot of work up front, but it actually made me a lot faster. Now I don't do that anymore, but it made me a lot faster jumping from character to character.
And if you have a multi-character scene, honoring the flow and the pace, the energy is more important than if you're like trying to read ahead to be like, who's this speaking? Who's this speaking? Before you start, because you need to know. Otherwise, again, you're stopping and starting a lot and don't really get the flow. So
a lot of narrators also mark their breaths, which is, I think, a singer thing as well. You mark your breath with a little comma or something. I don't necessarily do that, but
some do.
Some do. A lot of the narrators that we know do that.
It can be particularly helpful in nonfiction, where nonfiction books are
sentences that are like a paragraph long.
Yeah, I mean, nonfiction books are they're not written to be read aloud. They're written for content and ideas. And so when you have to bring them to life, you're frequently running up against gigantic sentences. And nobody really likes breaths in nonfiction reads at all. So marking those breaths, figuring out where the thoughts break down inside of a sentence can be really vital. I do, if I'm doing a big sci-fi world, I will frequently take notes on a separate sheet of paper and write down where people are from, so that everyone from the planet Doljar has a similar voice, and everybody from the planet Karlaka has a similar voice, whether it's all variations of British or variations of German or whatever, but that way there's some continuity. And those can be really intense. Some of these sci-fi books are 25, 30 hours long, multiple volumes.
Just hundreds of characters that, like, sometimes they'll be in the first book, and then you won't see them again until the third book. And so, another thing we do is keep voice banks. Did you say that already?
No, voice banks.
Voice banks. You can just take a little clip out of your audio and put it, keep it on your computer. That way, if you get to the third book and there's the character of whatever, you can look that up and say, oh, that's right, that's what that character sounded like.
The first time you meet a character, say their first line in the natural flow, stop, go back and highlight what they've just said, and then label that their name. Or you can put a marker down right where that is and label that marker their name, so that you have it as a reference point to go back to, because you will forget. You will forget. And as Julie said, I work on a series that's ongoing. The 9th book in that series is about to come out. There are characters that are still around from the first couple books. I have a voice bank. I've got a folder that has 150 names in there, so that if Chet Atkins comes up and I'm like, who's Chet again? What does he sound like? He's there. Great one. Yeah. Well done. High five. Cool. All right. So those are some of our script preparation guidelines. Again, every narrator does this a little differently.
Yeah. Please don't feel like you have to do it exactly the way that we just told you. But it's, whatever you feel is beneficial to you while you're reading, while you're actually narrating the book, to have that information right in front of you. So.
Real quick, while it's on the tip of my brain here too, 2 references that narrators love that we love. For pronunciations, particularly foreign word pronunciations, there's a website called forvo.com, Forvo. It's like Wikipedia for language. Yeah. It's user-submitted.
Words said by native speakers.
Yep. And then if you're looking for accents, there is something called IDEA, I-D-E-A. It's the International Dialects of English Archive. I believe the website is dialectsarchive.com. They are short audio pieces
Is
from
that
native
for?
speakers. It's for everyone. It's all over the world.
Oh, okay.
So if you're looking for,
I
if
know
you're
there's
trying
one
to
that's
find
specifically
accents,
for American dialects, and I knew that there was one specifically for British Isles dialects. But
IDEA has it all over the world, and they interview. Everyone's speaking in English, but they're from all over, and it's a great resource. So those two, awesome. All right. So we're sliding out of artistry. We're going to spend some time here talking about
into the technical aspects.
Right.
Yeah.
So in the booth, now this is true if you are going in to record in somebody else's studio or in your own studio. Your clothing is super important.
Very important.
You need to be comfortable for starters, right?
Yeah.
Wear things that allow you to breathe as evenly and as easily as possible. So loose-fitting waistlines are really important. Loose-fitting shirts, nothing super tight. Nothing that makes noise. Cotton is king in the booth.
Also, something that no one will tell you when you first get started is that it can get really hot in the booth. So honestly, like lightweight clothing, short sleeves, and again, nothing that's going to rub together and make noise, and that includes watches and jewelry and.
I'd say actually, if you're going into a studio, layers are clutch because some of those studios are super air conditioned.
Yes.
And then you're like, oh, why am I in shorts and a t-shirt? I really need a sweatshirt.
That's true.
So layers, cotton, loose fitting, breathable, no noise.
Yeah.
Don't wear watches. Don't wear jewelry that clangs. No multiple anythings. I actually frequently take my wedding ring off,
I do too.
much to my wife's chagrin.
No, I do too.
Only because sometimes it'll like hit, and then I gotta stop. So I just take it off and I set it down.
A good microphone, actually most microphones will pick up all of that. Any like extraneous noise, you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's there.
Yeah.
It's in the audio. And when they
your editor will tell you.
When they master the audio, they bring all the sound up, and they will find all those clicks, bangs, booms, and whatever.
When we first started doing this, I had an editor who wrote me a very sweet email because apparently when I was recording my room tone, my mouth was a little too close to the microphone. So he was like, just so you know, I can hear you breathing in the room tone, so you might want to back off the mic a little bit, which is a little embarrassing. But, again, it picks up everything. So.
Yeah. Cell phones too, if you can, keep it out of the booth entirely. Sometimes there's electrical interference,
yeah.
But for sure make sure that it's on silent and preferably flipped over while you're working so that it's not a constant distraction. Yeah. You can really focus on what you're doing. Those are the big things regarding your physical person when you're in that booth. Julie, you're the music lady. Talk about vocal health while I drink more water.
Okay. So vocal health in this industry is so important. And that means everything from watching your diet to making sure you're getting enough water to making sure that, like, if you know you have to record the next day, you should not have anything, not too much salt, not too many glasses of wine that's going to dry you out the next day. So yeah, hydrating is really, really important. I mean, you should just be drinking water all the time. And again, proper diet. We have to be really careful about our diets because anything that causes you to maybe produce more saliva, again, that's all going to pick up on a microphone. Any acidic foods is going to give you that like gurgly sound anytime you're recording. What else?
I mean, liquor, coffee.
Yeah, coffee's a big one as well.
Spicy foods, tomatoes.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, if you have acid reflux, all the foods you're not allowed to eat. Garlic. Anything that's going to not digest sort of easily and create additional mouth noises. The number one answer to the mouth noise issue, if you've got that sort of, they call it mushy mouth. It's just a lot of.
I have a little bit of a mushy
extra
mouth.
Sound. Apparently,
but I'm very aware of it. So.
Apparently, it's more common in the female mouth than the male mouth. We learned this recently. Green apples. Pectin is the naturally occurring product that, for whatever reason, regulates the amount of saliva that is in your mouth effectively. And pectin is found most in green apples, also grapes, but green apples are the
Green
number
apples.
one. We keep a bag in the house, and they are the snack food.
Take it into the studio with you. Take a bite.
Have a bite.
Yeah.
And it will get you right back where you need to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and alcohol drinking, it dries you out, so you've got to be careful. I've actually switched almost exclusively to drinking cold brew coffee. This is a quick. This is a quick plug for cold brew coffee, which
brew coffee.
I just found.
A narrator's best friend.
It's made from cold temperatures, and so it doesn't get that high acid content that a normal cup of coffee has. And I need
so you
the
can
caffeine.
you can get your caffeine kick without worrying about the acidity, what that's going to do to your gastrointestinal system and your voice.
I swear by it. So
it's pretty great.
And
then proper warm-ups, you know, like any way that you would normally warm up your voice to perform, you want to do that before you get into the booth. Otherwise, you're going to deal with vocal fatigue. You're going to deal with losing your voice. And stamina is really important. Yes.
Throat coat tea. There's
throat
a company
coat tea is
called
great. Yeah.
Traditional Medicinals. They make a product called Throat Coat, and then the
You're welcome, husband.
The vastly tastier lemon echinacea Throat Coat. It's great.
Licorice root.
Any studio I've gone into, they always have it on hand. We keep it in the house.
Also, green tea is very good if you have a sore throat or if you have a little bit of swelling. It's a mild diuretic as opposed to like black tea or coffee, so it won't totally dry you out, but it will help with the swelling in your throat.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but the throat coat is an absolutely
throat coat is
one. I'm just thinking too. I know all narrators again do some of this differently, but I keep in the booth Burt's Bees lip balm and Singer's Grace throat spray.
Alcohol-free.
Alcohol-free. Yeah. Find they generally have them at like a Whole Foods or a health food store.
Yeah, any type of health food store.
You can get them online. They're not cheap, but they last a while. And especially if I have a long day in the booth, or my voice isn't quite holding up, a couple sprays really kind of hit the reset button for me. So.
But again, warming your voice up is really important, and everyone does it differently. I mean, I'm a singer, so I usually do scales as my vocal warm-ups. James does a whole, I
got a whole Linklater warm-up thing.
James does Linklater, so.
Than I do, so.
You know.
Yeah. Record ratios, this is something we get asked a lot. This is also about time management, but I just wanted to talk about it here because it changes whether or not you're recording from home or you're in a studio and you have an engineer working for you.
Yeah.
If you're at home, generally the rule of thumb is 2 to 1. So 2 hours in the studio is going to get you 1 hour of finished product. That, because you're doing the engineering yourself, stopping and starting and everything, that may shade a little more toward 2.5 hours to 1.
It also depends on the subject material.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're doing a nonfiction book where even if you've looked up the pronunciations ahead of time, they can catch you off guard if it's not a word that you're familiar with. And so that slows you down.
Yeah.
I remember I did a book on epidemiology. I am no medical expert, and that, for me, was almost 3 hours in the studio to 1 finished hour of work. So it really depends on the subject material. You can do a romance. We can do a romance novel, and that's less than 2 hours in the studio for 1 finished hour, as a general rule. But
the sentence structure is a little simpler, and the dialogue is sort of naturally flowing, and the vocabulary isn't crazy intense. You can get a flow and get going. We're going to come back to record ratios a little later when we start talking about pay, but for right now, just know if you're working at home, it takes a little longer because you're also manning the computer that's taking care of the technical elements. Whereas if you go into a studio, I've found you're just focusing on the book, and somebody else is punching you in
all of the technical stuff.
And so you can go a little faster.
Yeah.
All right. So.
Next.
The home studio. The entire industry is moving in this direction as well. Now, that's not to say that there are not a ton of fantastic studios.
Oh, yeah.
Certainly in LA and New York and in London. and in a lot of major cities as well. I'm sure there
That
are
will
good
bring
recording
you in
studios in
to record.
Columbus.
Yeah.
The problem, of course, is they're going to charge their fee, or if it's the company itself, they'll pay you. But
Yeah.
if it's a third party, you're charging to sort of rent that space. If you're getting started and you're doing your first couple books and you don't have the capacity to do it at yourself at home, I would say incur that cost or take that out of your bottom line for the first couple books, because you don't want to buy $15,000 worth of equipment and then not use it.
Yeah.
So the first thing to know about the home studio is when to take the leap. For us, the answer to that was when we started getting work. And
well, not me. My first couple of books, I went in to one of the production companies and I recorded those with an editor. And then all of a sudden, James was asked if we had a home studio because he was about to be given quite a bit of work. And so we just said yes and then set everything up.
So build that home studio if you know that the work is going to be there for you. When you know that this is a way to make some money, then having a home studio is the way to go.
Yeah. Or if some of you are, some of you may be musicians, if you have some sort of studio set up to begin with, then, good on you. That's, yeah.
So with that in mind, let's talk about a couple of the things you need to know to get a space set up to record. And audiobook recording is very different than other forms of voiceover recording because of how long you have to be in the studio. I've got friends that do commercial work and animation work, and they've got this little cube that they have that they can throw around their mic. If you're doing a 30-second audition, that's fine. That'll get the job done. If you're doing a minute and a half of copy to send off, again, for an audition, you're good with that. And you can take that with you and you can record from wherever. That's fantastic. If you're recording an audiobook, you are going to be in there for hours. And anytime outside noise comes in and affects that space, you have to stop. And that's cutting into your energy, it's cutting into your time, and it's cutting into your bottom line. So, and the quality of the work that you're putting out.
A lot of companies will ask you about your noise floor. And that's, yes.
And that's the number of negative decibels at which silence occurs in your space. The lower that number, so the higher the negative, the better off you are. You want to shoot for something in the negative 50 to negative 60 range, or better if you can. So let's talk. We'll jump here to talk about soundproofing versus sound deadening. There's two elements to creating an effective recording space. One of them is soundproofing your space. That means keeping outside noise out of your studio. The easiest way to tell you how to do that is mass. Mass proofs space. So the thicker the material, the denser the material, the heavier the material, the better it is going to be at keeping noise out of space. Also, room size is vital. Everyone that records in a pretty tight space. We're in a very big room right now. You couldn't record in here.
No.
So
but like our studio, our first studio that we had was what, 4x4?
4x4.
And now one of our spaces is like 4x3.
4x3.
Yeah.
So 4x3, 4x4, and right now in LA we record in closets. We have a walk-in closet that we've transformed.
That we've built into studios because the walls were already there and they're easier to soundproof and sound deaden. So.
And honestly, if you've got a closet, you can even like keep clothes in a closet because they will help with the sound.
They'll help with the absorption.
They help with the sound deadening. So the other thing that you need after you've proofed the room is you need to deaden the sound. If you've got nothing on the inside of your walls, then the sound just bounces around and that echo picks up that reverb, ping. So you need to set up materials that are on the inside of those walls that help absorb some of your own voice to deaden that sound and flatten it out. Now, you don't want it so flat.
The cheapest way that we've found to do that is moving blankets.
Moving blankets do enough to take in some of that sound.
To deaden it, I mean, now we also, our studios now also have sound insulation foam and
acoustic tiling.
And acoustic tiling.
But you can do that.
But if you're just getting started and you're trying to make a studio, again, moving blankets are pretty cheap and you can use them to deaden the sound in a space pretty effectively. So as
you go up the chain, there are companies that make booths. Studio Bricks makes the one that is the most expensive but the most portable.
Yeah.
It breaks down the easiest. So if you're in a position where you're traveling a bunch, I mean, you couldn't take it on a plane with you, but if you're like maybe going to move in a couple of years and want to bring it with you, Studio Bricks breaks down the easiest and travels with you.
And then there are whisper rooms.
Whisper rooms. There's something called a DAW box, D-A-W, where they send you the instructions and you build it on your own. So you're paying a couple $100s for the instructional manual, and then
or if you're handy,
materials.
Look it up online and find some good resources and build it out yourself.
There are great, just YouTube.
Great resources.
People that are really good at engineering will help you. And again, when you're starting out, you want professional sound without breaking the bank.
Yeah. You can always upgrade later. Always. So, if you find you're getting a lot of work, then that's the time to upgrade.
So real quick, the difference between a USB and an XLR mic as far as that professional quality goes. The sound quality that you're going to get out of a USB microphone is just really not as good as the XLR. The USB changes the entire way that information gets sent into your computer and reduces the quality of that sound so drastically that it really gives you a flatter, hollower final product. It just does. There are some folks I know that there are some USB mics that they swear by. Do your research. There's plenty of people that have tested them out.
The first couple of books you did was on.
And the first purchase we made was
a USB microphone.
Was an XLR microphone.
But you can really tell the difference if you listen to, once you know, when you start listening to samples from narrators, you can tell when it's a USB microphone versus an XLR. So there's a marked difference in the sound quality.
Within that world of XLR microphones, there's a ton of different types of cardioid patterns and different companies and mics and price ranges that vary dramatically that we don't really have the time to go into now. But
it's a lot.
But know that there are some out there that are reasonably priced that will give you a really good sound quality to get you started. Again, the internet is a great resource. There is an audio engineering web forum called Gear Sluts that are all audio engineers that talk about the quality of microphones. B&Hphotovideo.com and Sweetwater and Musician's Friend. Sweetwater and B&H in particular, they really take care of their audio clients. And they have comprehensive videos on all their products and talk about what they're good for and how you can use them. So the internet can be a very invaluable resource for you there as well. But I would encourage you, especially if you're making demos, if you're working on a $99 Snowball right now, maybe see about renting some studio space to get a demo recorded on a better microphone. The XLRs require an audio interface, so these peripherals that you're going to need, that translates the XLR cable information and gives you a USB output that then goes into your computer. That's a purchase that you'll need to make if you have an XLR. And then some folks use preamps as well that sort of condition the sound from the microphone. So you'll go from the microphone to your preamp.
Give you a little bit more to play with in the gain.
To your audio interface, to your computer. Again, setting up my home studio or setting up my new mic, some videos online will really help you get there. So for now, I think that's really what you guys need to know about studios and getting started. Finding a quiet space that's comfortable for you to sit in and be in, that allows you to work for extended periods of time, those are the keys getting started. And finding a microphone that does the best job at making your voice sound good so that what you're sending out there is top shelf quality. Those are the key first steps for a quality studio at home. Audio programs, this one I've spent a ton of time trying to find the best places, the best resources, and the fact of the matter is that Pro Tools is the best, mostly because it does something that a lot of other audio programs don't allow you to do, and it is vital for audiobook narration, and that is that you are allowed to set a pre-roll. So a pre-roll, which is what you supply at the end, you supply a punch and roll record of your work. So the pre-roll allows you to listen to a set amount of time before when you start recording again.
Yeah.
So if you're in the studio and you work and I mess up in the middle of a sentence, I don't want to go back to the whole paragraph or the whole time I started recording. I got a minute of good audio. I just need to fix this bit at the end. I set my cursor down at the last good piece of audio, hit record, and I will hear the previous 2 seconds or however long I want to hear. That allows me to then jump in at the appropriate point.
Yeah.
Pro Tools is the only program I know of that has it just like set up, ready to go. There's your pre-roll. You can set up the time, and it's good to go. Reaper, which is a free program, also has the ability to set up a pre-roll. I have not been able to figure it out, but I know that it's possible. And Audacity, which is also a free program. Audacity is really free. Reaper is free to trial, and then I think $60 to get a license. But Audacity is another place to get started. Here's another resource, another narrator. Stephen J. Cohen was a website, stephenjcohen.com, and he's got a ton of great audio references. He even set up script templates so that if you're using another program like Adobe Audition that doesn't have a pre-roll option, he's actually created workarounds that you can use to input that into the program that you're working from. Whatever program you're using, you need the ability to do punch and roll recording.
Yeah. So
that when you stop, you can go back to the last good bit you have, whether it's at the end of a sentence or the end of a breath, record from there and pick up.
Yep.
That's the main thing. We use Pro Tools. It actually came free with the MBox. It was the first audio interface that we got. I believe those packages are still available, though I'm not sure. Pro Tools has actually now released their own sort of slimmed-down version called Pro Tools First that is free to use with limited storage in their cloud, and will give you a chance to use their interface, test out how that works. And if you're not recording a ton of content every day, you get what you need, save it, label it. You have to delete it to clear up your cloud storage, and then go back and use it again. So, yeah. If this is the section that gives you the biggest headache, I understand. This was, for artists, for actors, this was a really tough part of the world to sort of venture into.
Notice I'm letting him do all the speaking about this, because I really...
Again...
I mean, I've learned along the way, you have to have some facility with, programs, but...
If this is what you want to do, you'll find ways of making it happen, and the internet can be a really valuable resource for finding great videos and blogs and references for tutorials and ways to help set this stuff up. So I hope that was a good primer to know what the main elements are that you're looking for. Let's get out of this booth now.
Yeah.
Boom.
Moving on to the business
Woo!
basics.
All right. Part 3, the business of this part of the business.
Yeah.
Julie, let's talk about getting paid.
Okay.
Should have opened with this.
I know,
right?
really.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
So the pay rate in audiobooks is per finished hour, and that differs from any other part of the voice acting industry, which means that you are getting paid for the actual length of the book after it's been recorded, not the work that goes into recording the book.
So everything we talked about before, prepping the book,
Yeah.
reading it the first time, the amount of time you actually have to spend in the studio, all of that time is essentially on you, or really is just included in this negotiated per finished hour or
Yeah.
PFH rate. And that's what companies are going to quote you.
And
So
now-
this is what we offer you per finished hour.
And now, to be clear, if it is a pretty complicated nonfiction title where you're looking up a lot of stuff, a lot of companies will pay you for research in addition to your per finished hour rate. However, as a general thing, it's the finished hours of work that are turned in that you get paid for.
Or they'll set you up with somebody to do the research for you.
Correct.
You send them a list
Yes.
of words. They send you back the pronunciations. If you're working with an author independently and it's a nonfiction, I would strongly encourage you to say, I'm happy to do this book, but I need you to send me a list of pronunciations. Or even better, you read the book, write down the words you don't know, and send that list to them and say, please tell me how to pronounce all these words. Generally, it'll be people names and places, but I mean, if you can't find them and you don't know, I've had to call.
Doctors' offices
Doctors'
and talk to
offices.
the receptionist
I
and
had
say,
to
I'm
call
sorry,
the-
how do you pronounce the doctor's name?
Yeah, I had to call a county clerk in North Carolina once to find out how to pronounce a judge's name because there were no videos, there were no interviews, there's no way to find it online. So if you have an author that you're able to get in touch with, use them as a resource for name pronunciations. because that can really eat into the time that you're spending.
Yeah.
But yeah, and also ask if there's a research rate that you can get for doing nonfiction work. That work gets paid based on experience level to start out.
Yes.
Any job that's covered under the union, and even companies that don't have union contracts but still work in that under those parameters, they generally pay based on experience level.
Mm-hmm. They have what they call a new reader rate.
Yeah.
That's what most companies call it.
Pro companies start that out at $150 an hour.
Mm-hmm. Per finished hour.
Per finished hour.
Per finished hour. Yes.
That is the going rate for professional companies doing audiobook work for new folks. $150 per finished hour
for union
for books.
Jobs.
Professional companies.
Yes.
Please know that.
Yeah.
And ask for it and demand it. You're worth it. It's a lot of hard work that goes into making these books happen. Yeah. So that's what it is. We're going to talk a little bit about ACX in a minute, which is another avenue that folks explore and use to maintain, supplement. It's the core of their work. It's a independent collective, but knowing what the pay rates are is really important so that if you're working within that independent space, you're able to negotiate properly. That $150 per finished hour is for punch and roll recordings, for clean punch and roll. That's it, for doing that work. So just know that that is what you should be getting paid to start out. As you get more books under your belt, that rate goes up. And at any point, you're welcome to negotiate higher rates for yourself. Narrators with big names get paid way better than that. Yeah. But the experience itself, the number of titles that you have, will also help move you up that pay scale as you start working with some of those companies. Managing your time is a massive part of the business end of this thing because you really are your own everything. So hitting your deadlines, we use Google Calendar together and independently.
For both start dates and due dates for books.
Start dates, due dates, knowing how many hours we can generally get done a day.
What company it is that we're working for when we're doing each book.
Some of them different due times. Some people, like when they say Friday, they want it at the beginning of the day Friday. Some folks mean the end of the day. Some folks mean overnight is fine. So knowing those things so that you can maintain a professional decorum, because there's two things that will keep you in this business when you get started. Your talent and your professionalism. Those are the things that will keep you in this game. Continue to be good and get better at what you're doing, and
hit your deadlines.
Be good to work with.
Yeah.
Hit your deadlines, respond to emails, be available, say yes to work, know that you're there. Now, to that end, also make sure that you're managing your time and not taking on too much work.
Yeah.
Because you want the work that you're doing to be quality work, and you don't want to be pushing things around and moving stuff around. You want to be able to focus on books and do. I hear you. And do the best work that you can. So try not to overbook yourself. Know how much that you can get done. I think most of the narrators I talk to, they generally shoot for 3 hours, 3 finished hours in a day. If they're working on a book, that's a day. That's 6 to 8 hours in a booth. That's a full day of work. So you're looking at 3 finished hours of work in that given day.
And while 6 to 8 hours in a booth may not sound like a lot, you have to remember that your physical ability to sit in a position for that long and your vocal stamina are what really affect that.
Yeah.
So yes.
And you'll hit a wall and you'll be like, well, even if I have 10 more hours, I can't. My voice isn't there. My head's not there. We really like to give ourselves a contingency window too, because every narrator has a horror story about construction, gardening, all sorts of things that you're like, I did not plan to lose that hour of work.
Yeah.
And yet there it is. And so.
And when we were living in New York, as an example, when we were living in New York, our apartment was an interior apartment, so it faced a courtyard. So generally, it was extremely quiet. And then when we started recording audiobooks, the building across the courtyard started renovating apartments.
Yep. So we were for months. Yeah. We were only working at night. That was what we had, and that was what we had. So it flipped our days around entirely, and you had to plan for that to sort of stay in it. But at that point, we were that was where we were making our living wage. I was a babysitter, she was a bartender. Then we were getting enough books that we quit both of those jobs. So when we said yes to those deadlines and construction was happening, then that meant that we were sleeping during the day and working till 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, cool. Again, also you're your own agent here too. Even if you're a professional actor working in a major market, agents don't seem to care about audiobook work, which is great because they don't take 10%, but it sucks because they don't care and they're not helping you get more work. So you've got to be out there communicating with publishers, producers, authors. If you can build relationships with them, is a great way to get work, because if an author likes you or knows you, they can recommend you, and then that publisher or producer will come back to you and say, hey, so-and-so recommended you for this book, or they'd love to have you do this book.
And narrators, did you say that?
And other narrators.
Narrators as well. This community is extremely supportive, and once you start meeting other narrators, they will recommend you to people to narrate books.
It's
happened to us so much.
Supportive
it's a
space.
It's a lovely community of people who, you know, a lot of times in acting communities, everyone is just looking out for themselves, and that's just really not how it is in this industry. So
shout out to the narrator community out there. Yeah, it's really supportive, and people are exciting and engaged and know your voice too, and will recommend you if they can. So. All right. So.
Yes.
So this is the most important slide, I think, for action steps for you guys moving forward. If you haven't been totally put off by all of the work that goes into this, if you haven't been scared away by the technical elements, the time commitment, the physical stamina, the dietary restrictions, if you're still stoked about this, then let's put it down together. Right?
Yeah, let's do it.
So, publishers and producers are looking for contemporary material, something that's been printed within the last 10 years. Do not pick, this is the same that goes for like monologues, right? Don't pick something so famous that they're already going to have heard it or know the way it's supposed to be done. So pick a book that's contemporary, that's not famous. Pick books too. Don't do your own work for this. Pick published works of fiction and nonfiction.
Yeah.
Contemporary material. This is your chance to choose material that is right for you. Okay. You get to pick the genre. You get to pick the subject matter. You get to pick the age of the main character. You get to pick the age of find material that is right for you, that highlights everything.
And also something that you enjoy reading. You know, if it's Yeah. So look for something that sounds like your voice. That's what you're going to read the best, especially when you're first starting out, and that's what you want to put forth to companies. So, yeah.
Your demos should be, at the shortest, 90 seconds. At the shortest. This is totally unlike other parts of the voiceover world. They want 30 seconds of all your voices. They want 60 seconds of all your commercials. This is long-form recording. So they need to know, can you maintain this for 90 seconds, 2 minutes? Say the top limit is 5 minutes.
And that's maintaining a character voice. If you're doing a character voice, did you say dialogue male, female?
I did. You can though.
So that's one of the very important things that every production company will want to hear on your demo, and that is a scene that involves both a male character and a female character, because they want to know if you can convincingly portray a guy if you're a woman, or a woman if you're a guy.
How do you handle that?
And can you maintain that through a scene? Or is your voices all over the place? Also, the energy in the dialogue, the scene, you have to be able to maintain that ostensibly throughout an entire book, but for your demo, at least in that scene. So
the most important demos for you to have are a general contemporary fiction, and if you're interested in the space, a general contemporary nonfiction. The more specific you are, the more likely you are to excite a company in a specific area. So I like sci-fi and fantasy books. I wanted to do that kind of work. I made sure to put a sci-fi fantasy demo together that had like 4 characters and was high-paced action. Look for material that may be a little different, where one is mostly narrative with a little bit of dialogue, and one is very dialogue heavy. Things that show off your different skills. and practice and work on the material. And
again, you know what your interests are and what you're good at. So again, James said he has a degree in philosophy. So, showing that right off the bat is never a bad thing. Just something to think about.
Getting these, and have friends listen to them. If you have the opportunity to get them professionally edited or mastered, do that. If you don't spend an extra expense on that. But if you have a chance to get into a professional studio to record them, I would highly recommend it. Again, remember, you may get one shot to be heard by one company in a given year or something like that. So you want to make the most of it. And sometimes those technical elements, they can help separate you from the hundreds of other submissions that they might get in a month or a year. How to get that information to them. Companies have websites. You can find them all. I would highly recommend going to audible.com and searching their catalog, and you'll look and see they have publishers listed. If you're a member of the union, SAG-AFTRA, you can contact them.
They'll supply you
send
with
you
a list.
There's a PDF they have. They'll send you a list of all the publishers and producers that are out there with emails and email guidelines, how they want to take some. It's just like the agents and casting thing, they have breakdowns, just like that for this. Find their websites.
And some of them will say they don't want non-solicited submissions.
Yes, but most of them,
like some agents don't want that. But most of them will take them.
You need to have them available in a couple different ways. I recommend SoundCloud or your own personal website, or I actually use SoundCloud and then use their template on my own website. And then MP3s, not WAV files. The WAV files are way too large. MP3s compress them and make it possible to send some of them in an email. But even that gets a little dicey, and that's why SoundCloud or a website can really help you out. Just say, here's a link to my nonfiction. Here's the thing.
Yeah, because a lot of companies also will not accept emails with attachments.
Right. So know that. Read the
Inserting a link is a surefire way to have your email not end up in their spam. So
again, SAG-AFTRA is a resource, and again, even Audible, just searching what's on sale, the publishers' names are all listed there. So start writing them down. Then look all those publishers up there. They'll have submission links, and under that they'll have guidelines. We take MP3s submitted this way. We take emails this way. We take SoundCloud files, or we want a hard copy, whatever. Find that information once you got a good demo, and send them out. If you haven't heard back, I follow up a month or two later.
A month, yeah, I would say
especially if within that time you have done an audiobook or two, or you've gotten work somewhere else, reach back out. Send another email that says, hey, I sent my materials a month or two ago. In that time, I actually did get work with so-and-so. Just checking to see if you got that. Would you like me to resend it? I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do, and I think companies are happy with that. What we've heard from publishers and producers at conferences is they get a lot of emails. They like hearing from you when you have good stuff to tell them.
Yeah.
Have you gotten a book reviewed? Have you done a really fun, new, exciting title?
Or even things like, did you participate in an off-Broadway play or a West End production of some sort? They care about those things because they care that you're an actor in addition to an audiobook narrator. So.
Did you just spend a month in Iceland?
Yeah.
I mean,
anything like that.
That kind of stuff that's specific and engaging and could be useful and helpful information for them.
Yep.
That's the key. Focus on that.
Yeah.
So a quick note here about ACX2s. I want to have some time here for some comments and questions. If you get on ACX's website, which is a subdivision of Amazon, you can submit auditions directly to authors.
Create a profile for yourself.
Create a profile, and you can submit directly that way. They are independent producers, so generally the authors themselves that are paying to get their books produced. The most common format you'll find on there is what they call royalty share. Know what you're getting yourself into before you get on a royalty share project. Amazon takes, I believe, 60% of the royalties up front. Then you and the author split the other 40%. So you're looking at 20% of total sales, which over time may pay for itself. In the short term, probably will not. And if a book never gets off the shelf, you've done a lot of work for free. If you're just getting started and you're trying to get your name out there and you're trying to get some titles under your belt and you have the time and you don't need the money, maybe that's an option for you.
No, I wouldn't even say do it then. Like, honestly, unless it is although this would be very strange to find on ACX, if it's a best-selling title that you've seen on, a New York Times bestseller or something like that, where they're just trying to cut costs and do it through ACX, then that would be the only way that I would say do a royalty share. They also have, and this is what you should do if you're just starting out and you're trying to get experience under your belt, they have stipend projects.
The stipend is great.
Where you're getting paid a flat fee to do the book, but you know you're getting paid. So you're not going to be getting paid as much as you would for a company at a per finished hour rate, but you're still, that money is coming your way. That is what I would use it for if you're starting out and you want to get experience.
You can also negotiate a per finished hour rate on ACX.
You can.
The disclaimer here is that ACX hires producers, not narrators. So you're responsible for the editing and the mastering of that audio as well.
Which, if you can do it, good.
Great.
Yeah, if you have experience in audio editing, that's fantastic. But if you don't, then you're outsourcing that work to an audio editor
that you're
going to pay. Yeah, you're going to pay them for it.
And so know that going in and figure out what your bottom line is. Is there a way to do good work and get exciting jobs and get listened to through ACX? Absolutely there is.
Yeah.
And it's exciting because it is independent, and you don't have to wait for a return email from a company that's dealing with. You can hustle and get out there and make connections and make work happen. We just really don't want to see people do a ton of work for free.
Yeah, we don't want you to get taken advantage of, basically, just because you're just starting out.
For the work that you're doing. So ACX, they've got a lot of links. Make sure you really spend time on there, seeing how their pay structure works and how the products are required before you dive in.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool.
And let's skip to the last. Now that you've heard all of this,
all right. So
how do you determine whether or not this is right for you?
We've talked about a lot of these things, and I want to jump right down to the bottom, which is the library bookstore test, which is if you really think you want to do this and you're not sure if this is something you've just got skills for, go to the library or go to the bookstore, walk down any aisle, grab any book, don't look at it, take it home, sit in a closet or a small room with some good light, and read it out loud to yourself for 4 to 6 hours. If you're pretty good at cold reading and you really like it and you're having a good time and you feel like tomorrow you want to do it again, take those steps toward making a demo.
Now, let it be said, cold reading is a skill that you can improve upon immensely, because I am mildly dyslexic and I do this job. So, and my cold reading has gotten better. I mean, you find ways to work around that stuff. So don't get immediately discouraged if your cold reading isn't the best, if you're just starting out. But yes, the sitting in a closet and reading the book out loud to yourself is a good way to find out if that's going to drive you absolutely crazy, or if you think that this could be something that, you could sustain.
Yeah, it was recommended to me. It was the first thing we did, and that's a test we like to pass on. So. And
that is gonna, see if you have the physical, the mental stamina, and that takes care of all of the cold reading things that are in the rest of that side as well.
So there we go.
There's our
just
dog.
In time for our dog to bark. We are at the Q&A.
Go to Spot.
Your dog has a couple things to say too,
Good timing.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I've never heard this information before anywhere, and a lot of people, unless you're in that community, do not know how to get started in audiobooks, so this is very much appreciated. You guys did a great job.
To do a primer that kind of covered all of the areas.
Yeah.
So you had a little taste of all the avenues of this thing, rather than focusing on just the demo or just any part of it. So I hope that broad stroke was a good 101.
And not totally overwhelming.
No, this was very, very good. You touched on a lot of stuff in a very succinct, clear way, so thank you. So we do have some questions.
Great.
Okay, let's see here. What do you do? Is there, when you're in a booth, and obviously sometimes you will have to stop and start while you're narrating, is there sort of there's a goal to not stop and start as much as possible, right? And then how do you handle it if you do have to stop and start?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I think that varies from narrator to narrator. I would caution against the most amount of time possible.
Yeah.
Like the most important thing is how strong does your voice sound? And basically, if you've just narrated a page and a half straight, you probably need to like take a really good deep breath, maybe take a drink of water, possibly throw on some chapstick. Like,
Yeah,
so,
stopping is not a bad thing. I mean, especially if you're self-recording, stopping is a good thing to maintain your your voice and your mental,
yeah,
your ability to focus. So,
the most important thing there is the quality of the work and the general flow. So you want to get good enough at the stopping and then picking back up that you haven't lost your train of thought. But if you need to take a really big breath, or if the sentence isn't coming out right, stop yourself. Or if you mispronounce a word, or you say a word and then you're not 100% sure, stop and look it up. Go back. The rule of thumb for that pickup point where you want to start back up is, I would say starting out, the best place is generally at the end of a sentence.
Yeah.
That's the best place to start. As you get a little more fluid, you can find, if you've taken a very clear pause inside of a sentence, you can
if you
stop
come to like a parenthetical or something like that,
you can throw that start point right in there. You can listen to the first chunk of the sentence and pick up right where you left off. Then at the end of the day, you're going to go back and you're going to clean up the connection points from every time that you've started and stopped. You're going to listen to the part just before and the part just after. This is called cleaning up your punches. And what you do then is make sure that your start point was clean, so there's no half breath or you didn't cut off a word, and that when you enter, your entry point sounds smooth in the sentence. So those are the really big things to look at. And I know that there's the impulse to say, like, well, I'm getting paid for the finished product, so my efficiency factors into my bottom line. And it does, absolutely. And as you do this work, you will get better.
You'll get more efficient.
And you'll be able to do full paragraphs and full pages and still feel strong. But as you're starting out, the quality of the work is paramount. So make sure that you're giving yourself the best chunk of your audio that you can. Yeah, great question.
Do you guys feel like the expectation for that changes if you are recording on site? Like if you're not recording in a home booth, do the time pressures become more intense if you're recording in a studio?
You know what? To be honest, at least this is what I think, is that when you're working with an editor in a studio, your productivity so greatly increases that, I mean, yeah, you're aware of how much am I stopping, but it's not something to stress over because you can pick up and much quicker than you would be doing at home anyways. So
I went to work with a company, and they in their studio or whatever, and they were very impressed with how many minutes. Like, wow, you're one of the, you get the most done in a day. But they had blocked me for a certain amount of time, and the studio is already reserved for that. So they don't care. They don't care if I'm fast or slow. They gave me 3 full days. I did it in 2 days or 2.5 days. So nothing else is then getting put into the studio at that time.
Yeah, they're generally going to plan for the lowest common denominator. I mean, there is an expectation of professionalism. However, they have contingency time built into the hours that they have blocked off in the studio for you. So
and they want you to do a good job.
Yeah.
They're paying for this thing to be good.
Yeah.
If you're nervous about your cold reading skills, that's something that you can practice.
Yeah.
Just practice all the time. Again, Julie mentioned she's mildly dyslexic, so she practices her cold reading to see if she's throwing words in different places in a sentence. We'll frequently read the paper to each other over breakfast. You can find ways throughout your day to practice those cold reading skills. And then you go into that booth being really confident.
And I've actually gotten to a point where my brain will pick up on whether or not I have switched words around in a sentence when I'm reading, or if so I am able now to catch myself most of the time. I mean, obviously I'm still getting corrections for some of those things, but most of the time I am now able to catch myself when I do that. So
okay, cool. Thank you. Yes, that does answer the question very well. Thank you. How many different types of like genres, characters, dialects should be in one demo? And do any of these categories sort of take priority for what you want to showcase if you're particularly good at something?
I'd say faculty with a British accent is probably a really good start. And the biggest thing is being strong with the voices that you choose. It's not necessarily
I would
quantity.
actually say, do not do an accent in your demo unless it is something that you can do in your sleep. Mostly they want to hear your voice. They want to hear how you handle what.
We disagree on this point,
Okay.
which is okay. I mean, when I went in, my first job was for Audible, and I went in and read in their studio for their head of production, and I read the copy. It was a two-person sci-fi scene, and he actually asked me to go back, and he suggested that I do the second character with a British accent, and I was so nervous that I couldn't think of what any British person sounded like at all. I've done plays, like I can do it, but not then I couldn't. And so I just came up with a voice for this guy, and I finished, and he loved it because he loved the originality of the choice. And I committed to a specific voice. So if you're strong with an accent and you want to highlight that in a demo.
But again, I would say only one. I wouldn't go crazy with it.
Yeah, I don't think you don't need 10 voices in a thing. Your info sheet that says
you can say
I can do Welsh, Irish, Scottish, Jamaican.
And if you've done
French.
that one accent convincingly in your demo, they're going to believe that you can handle those other things that you're telling them you can handle.
If you've told them you can do it at that point, then they believe you can do it.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. If you're a person who wants to work in a very, very specific genre, like say children's books, mainly for children through the age of 12, you would just then get your list of companies, maybe off of Audible or whatever, and then target very specifically those companies, correct?
Yeah. Correct. Yeah, know who you're submitting to, what kind of work they produce most frequently.
Scholastic and Weston Woods would be the first two places to start. But there are also subcontracted producers that focus specifically on children's books, and so finding them and knowing who they are as well. You can highlight your internet searching to find those companies specifically, and that's great to know. Definitely, as a sort of ancillary point, know what genres you are willing to do. That is particularly true for the romance and erotica world.
Yeah.
Some people don't want to do it, which is fine. It's also true for the religious world. Some people don't want to do those books, which is fine. Know exactly what you want to do and tell the companies if they want to work with you, I would love to do this, but I'm not comfortable doing sexual content, or I'm not comfortable doing religious content. Great. They'll keep you off the list for that. We do.
Also, I was going to say something that a lot of narrators do. I mean, first of all, you should be comfortable with the content that you're reading regardless. However, if it's something that is a little racier, even though you're comfortable with the content, a lot of narrators use pseudonyms.
Yep.
You can record under a different name, just like an author can write under a different name. And there's nothing taboo about that. It's something that almost every narrator I know does. So asking to record under a different name for specific projects is not something that would ever make you lose a job, So.
Do you guys have a favorite genre or least favorite genre in which you like to work?
I love doing mysteries.
Okay.
I really like doing mysteries, but that's, I think, probably mysteries and thrillers, because that's something that I would pick up on my own if I went to a bookstore, and contemporary fiction. But
I have a love-hate relationship with nonfiction of almost any kind, because I love being exposed to subject matter that I might not on my own have introduced myself to. Like I just did a book on American utopian culture. Mm-hmm. So I read about all of these cool communes and people that are trying to live in a very specific way that I never would have looked at myself. So I love that information, but they're also the hardest to narrate because they require all the research and all the looking up, and the sentences are always so long. So
and philosophy.
Yeah, so I got a love-hate with the nonfiction, and the same with sci-fi. I love those books, I love those worlds, but they're work intensive because you got all
Yeah.
those voices and super lengthy. So
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. How do you guys establish, I believe you called it a decibel floor. How do you establish what that is in your home studio?
Okay, a noise floor. Yeah.
The thing was.
If you have Pro Tools,
You can run a test basically with most of the audio recording programs.
record silence,
Mm-hmm.
and then you go under Audio Suite, Other, Gain, and there's a thing that pops up. Highlight a section of your silence and click Analyze,
Yep.
and there will be a number that pops up in the negative thing. The exact way you phrase that question, though, if you type that into Google, there should be a video there.
Yeah, some sort of
Stephen
tutorial.
J. Cohen's website has a couple of different how to find out what my noise floor is websites. For different programs, he has step-by-step guides that help me figure out how to do it in Pro Tools. So, yeah, because some companies will want to know beforehand, and you want to know before you send it out. Like, is there a ton of room noise here?
Yeah, well, and if you're setting up a studio as well, you want to know that. You want to know how much more soundproofing or sound deadening needs to happen, or if you're good as is.
So that's one way to do it in Pro Tools is through Audio Suite. There's a gain feature. You highlight it and analyze. But again, that question in Google or on Stephen Cohen's website will give you more specific, because it's program dependent, whatever program you're using.
Disclaimer, we don't know Stephen Cohen.
No, we do not.
Okay. Do you guys think this is relatively speaking, I mean, in this industry, whether it's acting or, acting for film and television or other kinds of voiceover work, do you feel like it's an easier industry to make a living from over time consistently, or is it still kind of mostly subsidiary to other work and other side jobs?
Honestly, I think it's how much you want to take on. It could be either. This is now our main source of income and has been really for the past at least 3.5 years.
From the second that we started getting multiple titles, we both said for the next year, we are going to focus 100% of our professional and artistic energy on this. We stopped auditioning for plays. We stopped focusing on getting TV work.
When we first started, yeah.
When we first started, we honed in and gave it all the energy we had to build up titles and professional relationships to then sort of see where that went. And as it's happened, that network for us has continued to expand to the point where we now have about 6 companies that we work with regularly, so we're not relying on any one company to get in touch with us.
And most of the time, we don't now audition for work either. A company will just reach out and say, "We have a book for you."
We're on rosters, and they know what your strengths are, and they'll bring us in. So for us, it's become a full-time thing. I know for some of our friends who do this, they do a book a month.
Yeah.
They only want to do a book a month, and they've got a relationship with a company where they've established that that's where they're at because they love this other thing they do. And then if you're only navigating through ACX, obviously you're the one that has to attack that world. So then you make it as much a part of your weekly work as you want it to. So it really it can be whatever you need it to be for you or what you want it to be for you.
Again, we've sort of chosen to make this our full-time job. Not to say that we don't anymore.
I'll say this too. Audiobook narration is the most work for the least amount of money in the professional voiceover world. That's a fact.
Yeah.
Like animation, commercial, promo, narration, like TV narration, you get paid better to do less hard work than you do.
But that's because that's because for most people those jobs don't come along as often.
Right. That's true.
So
yeah.
So while you're getting paid a lot of money to do, an hour in the studio for, a commercial, that's not going to be an everyday thing, and that's why it's a higher pay rate. This is it can be an everyday job.
But for 4 years in a row, knock on wood, we've made enough to qualify for health and pension through the union.
Yeah.
If we hadn't been in the union from the outset, we would have made enough to qualify to join the union and then get those contracts. So So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. And you guys are, I know you just mentioned that you had sort of taken that first year starting out and stopped auditioning for plays and TV film. If you have sort of picked that up again, how do you navigate like getting, auditions the night before or same day when you're also working under a deadline for a book?
One of the best things about recording from home, especially from a home studio, is that you're creating your own schedule. So as long as you know that you can handle getting the hours that you need to get done, now, of course, like we said before, sometimes that means working into the night in order to make sure that you're meeting those deadlines, but that's not to say that you can't juggle your time effectively.
We moved to LA to try and explore commercial television, film, other avenues of the voiceover thing too. So yeah, my commercial agent will send me an email at 6 o'clock saying you got an audition at 10 tomorrow, and I'm like, well, okay. So that time that I had scheduled to put into the studio, I've now got to move that to the afternoon or the evening, and then whatever plan I had there, I've got to move around because that work is paying the bills and does take that priority at that point. I have found though, whenever I go meet with an agent or a manager, I use the fact that I make money doing audiobooks as a selling point, as both I'm working on my craft and
my
I work
schedule
from home
is
and I make my own schedule.
extremely flexible. Yeah.
So, and I'm busy, but I don't tell them how busy I am. I just tell them I work from home and I make my own schedule.
Yeah.
So I can make a same-day audition. And hopefully that will lead to us branching out into more avenues as well. Yeah.
Awesome. One person is asking, I recently viewed a webinar about audiobook narration where a well-known narrator suggested the website LibriVox, where free public domain books are read by volunteers who don't need prior experience.
Okay.
Do you guys know anything about this website, and if you do you recommend doing some volunteer work for audiobook narration for those who are kind of trying to test the waters?
I mean, if you're doing it just for the sake of practice and it's something that you might be doing at your house otherwise,
then yeah, sure.
Yeah, if you just really want to get practice before you start sending out stuff and making a demo, yeah, go for it, I would say.
But there are
but know how much work goes into it.
Well, there are other ways of doing public domain titles that can end up on Audible's website where you might make some money eventually. The LibriVox is straight up volunteer free thing, and they're distributed for free as well. I might also recommend trying to connect with the Reading House for the Blind. They're based in Louisville, Kentucky, but they also do books. They pay a different hourly. I think they pay $90 an hour, and the books are not distributed publicly. They are only available for blind listeners, and that can be a way to make some money and work on titles that are going to have a limited release and work on it that way. Yeah, I mean, again, like if you're like, I really want to read
Pride and Prejudice.
Whoa. If you really want to read Edith Brome, you're like, I love my book, it's my favorite book, I want to read it. Sure, get through LibriVox and get it out there for people to listen to it. LibriVox is not as judicious about their editing and mastering, so that final product sounds like a free product. Be aware of that, because then your name is attached to that and it's going to be a part of your, vibe moving forward. But sure, I mean, yeah.
Okay, cool.
That was
yes. For just a couple more questions. Can you go over just very quickly one more time, if you get on Audible to look for, how do you get lists of companies again? I think somebody missed a little step there on Audible.
Okay. Well, the way to do it through Audible is just start clicking on titles, individual books, wherever. Go to the bestseller or search somebody's name.
Yeah.
Click on titles, and then at the very top of the page, it will say title of the book, author, narrator, publisher.
Yeah.
The publishing company will be named there. Just real quick, there's Audible, Tantor, Blackstone, Brilliance, Penguin Random House,
Recorded Books.
Recorded Books is now
Highbridge Audio.
High Bridge Recorded Books and Tantor are all now one company, but there's
They
a
still
quick
produce
list.
under individual names.
Scholastic, Weston Woods.
Yeah.
And then there's the subcontracting companies: B Audio, Out Loud Audio, Antland Audio. If you're in the union or you have a friend in the union, have them contact SAG and ask for the list. Just say, I'd like the list of audiobook producers. They'll send it to you. It's got 5 pages of names, and that's how we got
submission guidelines.
That's how we got started. We got that guide and we sent them out to
Pimp your friends.
40 people. So.
And then if you are kind of just starting out and you are you don't have your own home setup where your apartment is not sound friendly, if you are going to hire out a recording studio and writing it off on your taxes, what kinds of things would you ask, like the engineer in a booth off-site, so that you make sure they know what they're doing for audiobooks?
You need somebody that is going to be efficient and proficient in punch and roll recording, and will then be able to deliver you a clean WAV file. Now, if you're also paying them to edit, then they'll do the editing and mastering. But if you're sending that out to another company, then you specify that you want unedited raw audio.
I would also make sure that they will be there to help you out with mic placement, especially if this is not something that you're used to doing. That engineer understands the proximity of the microphone to your voice specifically, and will get that right before you start recording, because that's extremely. If it's too close to your mouth, you're going to get every mouth noise, and if they can't tell you that before you start, you're going to pay a lot of money for no reason.
And if you definitely do not have any way of doing a home thing, my recommend would be get a demo done, and then for your first round of submissions, submit to companies that have studios that they can supply for you.
Yeah.
Audible has studios in Newark, New Jersey. Penguin Random House has studios in LA and New York. There are a couple companies that work in smaller markets that actually do have studios. So start with those folks that won't charge you to come in and record. They'll make it a part of what they pay you. So get that demo done. If you are in the union and you have access to LA or New York, both LA and New York have just fully renovated their voiceover studios, and you can rent out time for free. If you're working with an engineer, you pay the engineer a very nominal fee, and you are in a professional sound studio to record a great demo.
You're saying through SAG-AFTRA they just renovated their studios?
Both of them, in LA and in New York. So
also, I believe if a studio, if a production company contacts you and they know that you do not have a home studio, they are sometimes willing to pay a studio rental fee.
That's true.
In order for you to record remotely.
They know studios.
Yeah, and they will often, they'll suggest a studio in your area at a fee that they're willing to pay in order for you to record that book.
Yep. Yeah.
Cool. And then one last very brief question. Do you guys sit or stand while doing audiobooks?
In the studios that we have set up currently, we sit, but James is looking forward to the day where he can set up, I think, a standing space.
What I would like, the next studio that we set up will have the ability to do both. Those standing desks that are available now, where you push, that have like the hydraulics inside of them. System, they are. That's my dream next setup, because sometimes I do want to stand. If I'm a little tired but I can still go, getting up and standing is great. One of the things that helps with sitting is you're in there for a while, and being on your feet that long can be tough. And also, standing can affect your mic placement. So if you're standing, all of a sudden you end up a lot closer or a lot further away to the mic, and that can be pretty sensitive and change up quite a bit. So we sit. Most narrators I know sit, but I dream of the day where I can sit and or stand.
Well, a lot of that is though, like how soundproof is your space, and if you're working with a very small space because you want to limit the amount of sound getting in, sometimes it's just not possible to stand in those spaces because you're trying to keep the ceiling low, and
Yeah.
But yeah, if you have a really good space where you can stand, I think that's that's nice to have the option.
Okay, awesome, you guys. Well, this was really great, and we at Stage 32 want to thank you for giving your time and knowledge on this topic.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
A pleasure.
So before I let everybody go, do you have any final words for us to keep in mind?
Just you can find us on social media and various outlets, and if you have follow-up questions, we're extraordinarily grateful for the audiobook industry and what it's allowed us to do with our personal lives, and so it means a great deal to us to be able to share that information with folks that are also interested and excited, and the people that have the discipline and stay at it and really want to know. We really want to help them any way we can, and again, the community at large is very friendly.
Very welcoming. Yeah.